You're listening to India Bio Speaks, your one-stop resource for science, news and careers. Welcome everybody to our next episode on crafting your career in science. This episode we continue with our informational interview series, but for a change we have with us not one but two guests join this conversation about how they got into science policy and science diplomacy. We will also touch a bit about our recent collaborative initiative together, which is the Science Policy Forum. Joining us today is Chagun Basha, who is a space electronics engineer by training. He's currently a Science, Technology and Innovation Policy Research Fellow at the DST Center for Policy Research at the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. We also have with us Aditya Kaushik, also an engineer turned into a science policy professional. Aditya currently serves as the Deputy Director of Sustainable Water Future India and is also a project scientist at the Divecha Center for Climate Change, also located at the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. Welcome Chagun. Welcome Aditya.
Hi Lakshmi.
Thanks Lakshmi for inviting me to be part of this podcast.
So Aditya and Chagun, it's quite an unconventional turn for both of you from being engineers to science policy professionals. So how did that transition happen? Share your stories, both of you. Aditya?
Yeah, so I'm an engineer by training. I got my bachelor's and master's degree in electrical engineering and took a traditional path and worked for a mathematical computing firm called MathWorks in Natick, Massachusetts for about 4 years, where I had an opportunity to work in traditional engineering discipline in development and quality management, but also had an opportunity to work in the area of technical marketing and partner management. I realized that my interest was more in communicating the use of technology to an uninitiated audience, to use technology to create applications rather than developing the technology itself. While I was working at the company, I also had an opportunity to work with the local government in Massachusetts to use science and technology to create jobs. This gave me an opportunity to explore the science policy space, and I was hooked on ever since then. I realized that as to develop some expertise in science and technology, I pursued a master's degree in electrical engineering. I thought I should do the same to get a better understanding of policy and diplomacy. So that led me to pursue a Master's of Arts degree in Law and Diplomacy at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy that's based out of Boston, Massachusetts, where I met like-minded people to explore the role of science in international relations. So this is my story.
Chagun, let's hear yours.
Yes, Lakshmi, this is pretty much going to be the similar story, but I didn't take a formal education in policy. Let me just share before this policy fellowship that I'm in currently, what I was doing. I was a hardcore bench researcher in electronics. I was working in France for a space electronics related project, and that was part of my PhD. And before that, I completely had an engineering academic training by a Bachelor of Engineering and work experience as an R&D engineer. But then during my PhD time, I realized that I don't want to do bench research for the whole of my life. So I decided to look for non-lab based career options. So I stumbled upon this site called Versatile PhD, and this was during my third year of PhD. So it gave me enough time to explore the options. So that site actually gave me a lot of career paths that I could explore. One of that interested me a lot was science policy. So I studied a little bit by my own. At the same time, in Paris, the climate change convention was happening. So I volunteered for an Open Innovation Challenge, and that was next to the COP21 event. So I could actually see how science policy works in a larger scale. Although I was not participating in those discussions, but I could actually witness it firsthand. That kind of drove me towards this field, and I'm completely in it now.
So, Chagun and Aditya, now that you've found your niche, what are your current roles and responsibilities or deliverables in the position where you're in right now?
The Policy Center is just like 4 years old. It started around 2013-14, and I belong to the first batch of fellows. The whole fellowship program started in 2016. So I don't have a written document which says these are my day in and day out roles, right? When I joined IISc's DST Center for Policy Research, there are a lot more to be done than being a policy fellow. So even today, I do all those activities, which is a primary activity given by the nature of this fellowship is policy research, creating evidences for science, technology, innovation policy. That's a primary role that I do. In addition to that, I also work on capacity building activities, like Lakshmi, like we had few capacity building workshops, and we organize it, and I play a major role in pulling in resources and organizing those activities. And then project development, creating partnerships, like engagement with other entities, academic, government, and non-academic entities. So I kind of do policy research, capacity building, project development, all as part of this fellowship.
So, Aditya, is your territory quite similar, or is it vastly different from Chagun's?
It is similar in a lot of ways. So the question about core deliverables and responsibilities is a very difficult one to answer, because the entire realm of science policy is very unstructured. My experience of working in my current position, I work with this initiative called as the Water Solutions Lab, which is an international scientific collaboration between Sustainable Waters Futures program that's based out of Australia and the Vicha Center for Climate Change that's based out of Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. I was the first employee hired to work at the Water Solutions Lab, and my job was to get the lab up and running. This means to do whatever it takes to get the lab off the ground. The aim of the Water Solutions Lab is to address urban water challenges in the city of Bangalore with an aim to bridge the gap between science and policy and knowledge and practice. In the initial stages, the plan of action was to identify stakeholders who would be part of this initiative. The Water Solution Lab is a multi-stakeholder collaborative program. So it was imperative to get hold of people from the governing agencies, private sector, other academic institutions. The second step was to develop a detailed concept note that would explain what this solution lab would do, how the solution lab is different from other programs in the same space, and then finally identify what sort of projects we would want to get involved in. And the third step was to flush out in more detail what these projects would do, and finally hire the right kind of people who would take these initiatives forward. I'm happy to say that we are a team of 15 now. Just recently, we organized a massive international conference called the Water Future Conference, where national and international experts from all over the world gathered to deliberate on the global water crisis that plagues the 21st century.
So as I can see, Chagun and Aditya, in your current roles of having these atypical job descriptions, many a times you had to both navigate unstructured or even uncharted territories. So I would imagine your work days also correspondingly atypical. So I'm sure it's not a 9 to 5. So what is it like?
Yeah, Lakshmi, like you said, it's not conventional, and maybe it would become a conventional 9 to 5 kind of a job in future. But currently, what I personally see is a lot of traveling, meeting with stakeholders, arranging meetings with different kind of people to bring them together, build projects together, and trying to give our policy research outcomes let's say, policy recommendations or briefs to policy makers or those who are in a position to influence policy. So it's a mixture, and this is the best part about this career, because this is quite exciting and it's not boring. So.
Again, very similar to what Chagun said. I can divide my experience in this space into two halves. At the beginning, it was all about creating some sort of institutional structure for the Water Solution Lab. So now that the Water Solution Lab has been set up, a typical day involves working on our specific projects, meeting with various stakeholders who can be part of the lab, as well as part of specific projects that we've undertaken, doing a lot of outreach and capacity building activities.
The involvement of science professionals and science graduates in influencing policy change is becoming more and more critical these days. So what do you see as the prevalent gaps and the emerging opportunities here?
Science and technology is or has been inextricably linked to path of development. And role of science and tech is very crucial, not just in public policy, but also in an international relations setting. If you go around the world and look at the educational curriculum of different universities who teach these fields, apart from focus on security studies, students study impact of digital tech and role of science, especially in international relations. But however, such structured opportunities are very few and far between. In most cases, science policy field is unclear, unstructured, lacks institutional capacity. And structure and institutional capacity is very important for creating pathways and incentives for future science policy professionals.
Well, speaking of building capacity, Chagun and Aditya, can you talk a bit about how does one prepare to embark on a career in science policy? What are the training opportunities that are available, and how does one gain relevant experience?
Yeah, currently we do have a lot of opportunities to get into this field, although it's not completely visible to the community out. But I can just mention a few, and maybe in the description we could provide more details. Currently, Ministry of Science and Technology, Department of Science and Technology in India has this DST STA Policy Fellowship Program, which is running for postdoctoral level for past 3 years. And this year we are planning to expand it to even at young professionals level, like non-PhDs also can get into this. And this is at the fellowship level. And similar to that, there is also MHRD sponsored fellowship on science policy currently. Apart from these fellowship, which are kind of year-long or 2-3 years long programs, we do have, as part of the DST centers and other collaborative initiatives, we do have workshops, week-long workshops, or maybe kind of induction orientation programs, which actually introduces literally anybody to science policy by giving foundational courses or expert talks, panel discussions and stuff. We'd be happy to provide more details if required. And about the graduate programs, I think Aditya is the best person to probably elaborate on that.
One example of gaining expertise is to do what I did, was to get a degree in this space in either public policy or international relations. But getting a degree comes with a few caveats. It requires commitment, time, and also money. If you're able to and privileged to pursue one, I highly recommend this to budding science policy professionals, because when you go to a university to get a degree in policy, you are encouraged and incentivized to approach this area through different vantage points that might not be available if you pursue select fellowships. So if you are able to pursue a degree in this space, then I highly encourage you to do so.
So finally, are there any words of career wisdom that you would like to leave our listeners with today from your journey so far?
I don't know about career wisdom, but I can set expectations for budding science professionals. Science policy, especially in a country like ours, is the pathway is unclear, it's unstructured, and in most cases it's not even lucrative. But with right mentors, with the right attitude, and with some amount of passion, you can actually help create structural mechanisms and institutional capacity from scratch, which can be a very rewarding and an impactful experience.
Thank you, Aditya. And speaking of creating something from scratch, I would like to take this opportunity to share that the three of us are excited to have launched the Science Policy Forum that we invite all of you to be a part of. This forum is currently hosted on the India Bioscience website at www.indiabioscience.org/Science Policy Forum. It'll feature articles, resources, opportunities, and most importantly, a space to discuss various topics of relevance. Thank you, Chagun. Thank you, Aditya, for joining and sharing your career stories, and most importantly, for collaborating on building a community of science policy enthusiasts.
Thanks, Lakshmi, for having me and giving me an opportunity to talk about my career path in the science policy space. I'd like to wish all the potential science policy professionals out there a very good luck.
Absolutely, Lakshmi. This is really fun. I just want to add a statement about our Science Policy Forum. I'm really excited about it. We want this forum to be a one-stop platform for all the science policy professionals in India to join and discuss and deliberate on various aspects of science policy, scholarly work and practices.
And to all our listeners, thank you for listening, and as always, join us again to hear another unique and interesting career story only here on Crafting Your Career in Science. If you're passionate about scientific research, communication, outreach, and science education as we are, please connect and engage with us, and here are some ways that you can do so.
Visit our website at www.indiabioscience.org.
Subscribe to our newsletters.
Write for us and join our online discussion forum at discuss.indiabioscience.org.
Advertise jobs, grants and events in the life sciences on our website.
And feel free to contact us anytime at hello@indiabioscience.org.
Until next time, enjoy your science and stay engaged to enable change.